Subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon to never miss an update from RAU'S IAS. Do not forget to subscribe to our Telegram channel for all the updates and materials.
Hello and welcome to Daily News Simplified, an answer to what, why and how of newspaper analysis from the perspective of civil services examination. Today we have taken up Delhi edition of The Hindu newspaper dated 20th of February 2022. The articles which we are going to take up today have been displayed on the screen, and let us now begin the discussion. So the first news which we have taken for today's discussion appeared in the Indian Express Explained section last week. ISRO successfully launches EOS-04, two other satellites Monday morning. So the polar satellite launch vehicle blasted off at 5:59 am from the first launch pad of Satish Dhawan Space Center at the end of 25-hour countdown, marking the space agency's first mission launch in 2022. To start with, you should be very well versed with the location of Satish Dhawan Space Center, and as you can see on the screen, there it is, Satish Dhawan Space Center. Now, whenever a news related to mission of NASA ISRO comes into the newspaper, students often wonder, why do we need to study this? And for that, the best case demonstration is 2016 prelims question about Mangalyaan. There were three statements given. Statement 1 was, the Mangalyaan launched by ISRO is also called the Mars Orbiter mission. Statement 2 was, it made India the second country to have a spacecraft orbit the Mars after USA. And the third statement was, it made India the only country to be successful in making its spacecraft orbit the Mars in its very first attempt. And so, the right answer was C. The Mangalyaan launched by ISRO was also called Mars Orbiter mission, and it made India the only country to be successful in its very first attempt. However, India was not the second country to have spacecraft orbit the Mars after USA. After USA and before India, there have been other successful attempts as well. For example, by USSR, Japan, China, and also European Space Agency. And so you can totally understand how important these space missions are. And since ISRO has launched EOS-04, it becomes important for us to go into a little bit detail about this project. And so it is the fourth in a series of Earth observation satellites that are being launched under a new generic name. So earlier, ISRO would launch a lot of satellites. For example, you must have heard about INSAT, RESORCESat, GSAT, SCATSAT, and various other names. And so, they were named differently for the specific jobs that they used to perform or the purpose for which they were designed. So for example, the Cartosat series of satellites were meant to provide data for land topography and mapping, while the OceanSat satellites were meant for observations over sea. And now, ISRO has done away with objective-based criteria of identification and nomenclature. All these would now become a part of the new EOS series of satellites. So for example, various purposes for which ISRO launches different kinds of satellites, for example, land and forest mapping and monitoring, mapping of resources like water or minerals or fishes, weather and climate observations, soil assessment, and geospatial contour mapping are done through these satellites. So you can easily understand what are the purposes for which space technology, especially by ISRO, is being utilized. So as you can see, the name itself shows that this is the fourth in series. So what about number 1, 2, and 3? So out of these three, only the first one, EOS-01, launched in 2020, is in orbit right now. And so what happened to 02 and 03? And as a matter of fact, EOS-02, which was a microsatellite to be flown on a new launch vehicle called SSLV, which was Small Satellite Launch Vehicle, is yet to be launched, while launch of EOS-03 had ended in a failure in August last year. Just like EOS-01, the 1710 kg EOS-04, which will be placed in a sun-synchronous polar orbit of 529 km, is a radar imaging satellite which would have made it a part of RESAT series earlier. But since the nomenclature has been changed, RESAT would be named as EOS-04. So the question is, what is the advantage of radar equipment on a satellite? And so One of the biggest advantages which radar imaging gives over other optical instrument is that it is unaffected by weather, cloud or fog or lack of sunlight. And since it is independent of the uncertainties given by weather or climate, it is useful throughout the time which it serves. And it can always produce high quality images in all conditions, making it suitable for surveillance. And as you can see on the screen, these are the images which have been retrieved or made using radar imaging. And so EOS 04 was designed to provide high quality images for applications such as agriculture, forestry, plantations, flood mapping, soil moisture and hydrology. It will complement the data from ResourceSat, Cartosat and ReSat 2B series of satellites that are already in orbit. And so as we all know, once a mission blasts off in space, it's just often not that it carries only a single instrument or a satellite. And so just like always, there were two other small satellites on board, InspireSat-1 and INS-2TD. Let us know in the comment section what was the purpose for which they are intended and who were the manufacturers of these two satellites. Let us now move on to the next news. The next article which we have taken deals with the basic science and the concept of nuclear fusion. It appeared in the Indian Express section last week. A breakthrough in nuclear fusion and why it is significant. And so scientists in UK have managed to produce the largest amount of energy so far from a nuclear fusion reactor. The same process that makes the sun and all other stars shine and emit energy. This result is being seen as a major breakthrough in the ongoing global efforts to produce a fusion nuclear reactor. And so whenever we come across such basic terms, it is always a good idea to visit previous year questions. And a case in point is a question which was asked by UPSC in 2013. The known forces of nature can be divided into 4 classes, which are gravity, electromagnetism, weak nuclear force, and strong nuclear force. With reference to them, which one of the following statements is not correct? A. Gravity is the strongest of the 4. B. Electromagnetism acts only on particles with an electric charge. C. Weak nuclear force causes radioactivity. And D. Strong nuclear force holds protons and neutrons inside the nucleus of an atom. And so the right answer was, of course, was A. Gravity is not the strongest but rather the weakest of the 4, and because question asked for incorrect statement with reference to them, which one of the following is not correct, and so this was the only not correct statement. Whereas yes, electromagnetism acts only on particles with an electric charge, weak nuclear force causes radioactivity, strong nuclear force holds protons and neutrons inside the nucleus of an atom. So this turned out to be only incorrect statement and hence the right answer. And so the point which I'm trying to make over here is when Indian Express publishes a news with respect to nuclear fusion reaction, it is important for us to go through the basics of it. So before starting with fusion, we should first cover the most often encountered concept when it comes to nuclear energy, which is nuclear fission. So all current nuclear reactors, the nuclear reactors from which we are deriving power, are based on fission process in which the nucleus of a heavier atom is split into those of lighter elements in a controlled manner. This process is accompanied with the release of large amounts of energy. According to the formula, E is equal to mc square. While fusion is exactly opposite process in which nuclei of a relatively lighter atoms, typically those of hydrogen, are fused to make the nucleus of a heavier atom, and much more energy is released in the fusion as compared to the fission. The fusion of two heavier isotopes of hydrogen, which are deuterium and tritium, to form a helium nucleus produces 4 times as much energy as is released during the fission of a uranium atom, the kind which we see in our nuclear reactors. And so whenever we talk about energy security and future sources of energy, nuclear fusion holds the most prospect. But there are a lot of problems because of which nuclear fusion reaction has still not become a viable technology for which researches are going on across the globe. And the news because of which we are discussing this concept is exactly along the same direction. And so trying to harness energy from fusion reaction is not a new endeavor. Scientists have been making efforts to build a fusion nuclear reactor for several decades, but the challenges are high. Fusion is possible only at very high temperatures of the order of few hundred million degrees Celsius, the kind of temperature that exists at the core of the sun and the stars. Recreating such extreme temperatures is not an easy task, as all of us can understand. And so the materials that will make up the reactor too need to be able to withstand such huge amounts of heat. There are several other complications as well, apart from attaining such high temperatures. For example, at such high temperatures, matter exists only in plasma state, where atoms break up into positive and negative ions due to excessive heat. Plasma, which tends to expand very fast, is extremely difficult to handle and work with. So there are two major demerits because of which we are still not able to attain the full financial and economic viability of nuclear fusion, and also there are a lot of lacunas when it comes to the technology of this concept. But the benefits are immense. Apart from generating much more energy, fusion produces no carbon emissions, the raw materials are in sufficient supply, produces much less radioactive waste compared to fission, and is considered much safer. This much discussion is more than sufficient to enable you to write answers not just in mains examination but also in MCQs for prelims examination. Let us now move on to the next article. What is an FIR? Appeared in the Indian Express section last week, and it came into limelight because of various reports suggesting that the police officers on the ground are not filing FIR and general public is facing a lot of problem. Now, although this concept as such is not directly relevant for UPSC examination, but a very simple and plain question as to which one of the following clearly explains what FIR is could be asked in the prelims examination. As a general aware person and citizen of our country, it is extremely important for you to understand what is an FIR. So FIR is the document that has been prepared by the police after verifying the facts of the complaint. An FIR may contain details of crime and the alleged criminal. So, is FIR defined in IPC or Indian Penal Code? No, it is not defined in IPC or CRPC 1973 or in any other law. But in police regulations or rules, information recorded under section 154 of CRPC is itself known as FIR. So the term has not been defined in any of the legislations. Section 154, which deals with information in cognizable cases, says that every information relating to the commission of a cognizable offense, if given orally to an officer in charge of police station, shall be reduced to writing by him or under his discretion or under his direction and be read out over to the informant. And every such information, whether given in writing or reduced to writing as aforesaid, shall be signed by the person giving it, and the substance thereof shall be entered in a book to be kept by such officer in such form as state government may prescribe. And this is what is colloquially known as FIRs. So what is a cognizable offense? And so a cognizable offense is one in which a police officer may, in accordance with the first schedule of CRPC or under any other law for the time being in force, may make an arrest without a warrant. In the first schedule, the word cognizable stands for a police officer may arrest without warrant, and the word non-cognizable stands for a police officer shall not arrest without warrant. So all those cases in which police is empowered to arrest a person without a warrant from a judiciary is known as cognizable offenses. So what is the difference between complaint and an FIR? So the CRPC defines a complaint as any allegation made orally or in writing to a magistrate with a view to his taking action under this code, that some person, whether known or unknown, has committed an offense but does not include a police report. However, an FIR is the document that has been prepared by the police after verifying the facts of the complaint. The FIR may contain details of the crime and the alleged criminal as well. If, on the basis of a complaint, it appears that a cognizable offense has been committed, then an FIR under section 154 of the CRPC will be registered and the police will open an investigation. If no offense is found, police will close the inquiry. In case of a non-cognizable offenses, an FIR under section 155 CRPC, commonly called NCR, is registered and the complainant will be asked to approach a court for an order. The court may then direct the police to investigate the complaint. So what is a zero FIR? So when a police station receives a complaint regarding an alleged offense that has been committed in the jurisdiction of another police station, it registers an FIR and then transfers it to the concerned police station for the further investigation, and this is known as zero FIR. No regular FIR number is given. After receiving the zero FIR, the concerned police station registers a fresh FIR and starts the investigation. And so what if the police refuse to register an FIR, because of which we are discussing this news article? So under section 154(3), if any person is aggrieved by the refusal on the part of officer in charge of a police station to register an FIR, she can send the complaint to the superintendents of police or DCP concerned, who, if satisfied that such information discloses the commission of a cognizable offense, will either investigate the case or direct an investigation by a subordinate police officer. If no FIR is registered, the aggrieved person can file a complaint under section 156(3) before a concerned court, which, if satisfied that a cognizable offense is made out from the complaint, will direct the police to register an FIR and conduct an investigation. So you can totally understand, in case of incapacity on behalf of police junior level officers, there are senior level officers which are responsible, and if they do not entertain a complaint, CRPC provides for a judicial way also. So this is something which you also should keep in mind if ever you have to file an FIR. Let us now move on to the next article. The next important article deals with again a basic concept. What are repo and reverse repo rates? And in the prelims examination, basic terms like these have often been asked. For example, in 2016, UPSC had asked, what is or are the purposes of marginal cost of funds based lending rate, or MCLR, announced at that point of time by RBI? Statement 1. These guidelines help improve the transparency in methodology followed by banks for determining the interest rate on advances. Statement 2 was, these guidelines help ensure availability of bank credit at interest rates which are fair to the borrowers as well as the banks. Both statements were correct. So to ensure better transmission and transparency of rates, the RBI introduced MCLR framework, under which banks have to calculate their cost of funds based on the latest rates offered on the deposits or borrowings. This was to ensure that changes in deposit rates were immediately reflected on the bank's cost of funds. Apart from helping improve the transmission of policy rates into the lending rates of banks, these measures are expected to improve transparency in methodology followed by banks for determining interest rates on advances. At the same time, guidelines were also expected to ensure availability of bank credit at interest rates which are fair to the borrowers as well as the banks. Further, the marginal cost pricing of loans will help the banks become more competitive and enhance their long-run value and contribution to economic growth. And so similarly, whenever the RBI comes up with policy rate review, so these are the interest rates that the commercial banks themselves pay when they borrow the money from RBI or get when they deposit the money in RBI. So wherever the banks are in need of money, either to satisfy some of the regulations set by RBI or in order to do more lending, they have to go and knock the doors of RBI. And so the interest rate that RBI charges when commercial banks borrow money from it is called repo rate. While the reverse repo rate is exactly the opposite, which is the interest rate that RBI pays commercial banks when they park their excess cash with the central bank. So whenever bank have some extra cash and they have no way to figure out what they can do with that cash, until that time they deposit that money with RBI, and so RBI pays some amount of interest rate for that as well. RBI is also a bank, as all of us know, and has to earn more than it pays, and that is why the repo rate is higher than the reverse repo rate. At present, the repo rate is 4%, which is what you are going to pay RBI when you take money from RBI, and 3.35% is the reverse repo rate, the interest which you are going to get when you park your excess cash with RBI. Using these two rates, RBI sets the tone for all other interest rates in the banking system and through that route in the broader economy. For instance, when RBI wants to encourage economic activity, it reduces the repo rates. As the repo rates are reduced, which means for every 100 rupees which you borrow from RBI, you have to pay less amount of interest. And so it becomes increasingly easier for the banks to extend the credit because they are getting the credit themselves at a very low cost from the RBI. Doing this enables commercial banks such as RBI to bring down the interest rates they charge as well as the interest rate that they pay on deposits. Thus, in turn, incentivizes people to spend more money because keeping their money as a saving in the bank pays less and less. And so the businesses are incentivized to take new loans for new investments because new loans now cost a little less as well. It is for this reason that repo rate and reverse repo rates are often referred as the benchmark interest rates in the economy. So if the question is directly asked which one of the following best explains the benchmark interest rates in the economy, you know what should be the right answer. Let us now move on to the next news. So the next article which we have taken up appeared in the Indian Express section last week. What is the row between Centre and Telangana government over renewable energy procurement? And so Telangana has been extremely vocal about the increasing burden forced upon states by the Centre on account of clean energy cess imposed on coal and renewable purchase obligations. And so we are going to understand what RPOs are. Under RPO, power distribution companies purchase a certain percentage of their requirements from renewable energy sources. Renewable purchase obligations set targets for states for both solar and non-solar energy procurement as part of their RPO. RPOs are a part of the international commitment made by countries to carry out energy transition from fossil fuels to non-fossil fuel sources. States have thus far not been able to meet RPO targets, with over a dozen states and UTs achieving less than 60% of the RPOs. And so the problem is that whenever you have to meet renewable purchase obligations, a major share is given to solar power. Now, a state like Telangana has questioned these practices and rules. And so the state like Telangana has questioned the mandate to procure a certain percentage of power from solar, noting that Telangana had hydropower projects producing over 2.5 gigawatt of power from rivers. So if they produce 2.5 gigawatt power from hydropower, are they supposed to stop these acquisition and purchase solar power just because the central government wants it? Because after all, hydropower is also clean and renewable energy source. And so the time has come for the center to rethink over renewable purchase obligation and do away with two categories of solar and non-solar. Instead, what government should be concerned about is the purchase only from renewable energy sources and not the subcategorization of the sources from which the power is being acquired. So one of the 3 persons diagnosed with Lassa fever in UK has died on February 11. The cases have been linked to travel to West African countries. The Lassa virus is named after a town in Nigeria where the first cases were discovered. Now, whenever it comes to diseases and diseases which are in news a lot, 2019 previous year question is a benchmark question which tested your extensive knowledge and information about various viral diseases. Which one of the following statement is not correct? Hepatitis B virus is transmitted much like HIV. Hepatitis B, unlike hepatitis C, does not have a vaccine. Statement C was globally the number of people infected with hepatitis B and C viruses are several times more than those infected with HIV. And statement D was some of those infected with hepatitis B and C viruses do not show the symptoms for many years. And you had to identify the incorrect statement. And for some time, let us postpone the right answer and try to decode what UPSC tested. So, in the first statement, UPSC wanted to know about the mode of transmission. In the second statement, it wanted to know about the vaccination. In the third statement, statement C, epidemiology of particular viral disease or people infected. While in statement D, it wanted to know about the symptoms. So whenever you have to prepare a disease or a common infectious disease which is creating a lot of problem for the global community or India, these are the four aspects which you have to keep in mind. Now moving on to the right answer. Statement A is correct because hepatitis B is transmitted much like HIV. The virus is transmitted through contact with the blood or other bodily fluids of an infected person. Second statement is incorrect because hepatitis B vaccine is the mainstay of hepatitis B prevention. So this statement is incorrect, which is the right answer. While it's true that globally the number of people infected with B and C viruses are several times more than those infected with HIV, and some of the infected people, just like all other viruses, do not show symptoms for many years. And so when this new virus, Lassa virus or Lassa fever, is in news, we need to cover these aspects. It is an acute viral hemorrhagic illness caused by Lassa virus, a member of arenavirus family of viruses. Humans usually become infected with this virus through exposure to food or household items contaminated with urine or feces or infected mastomys rats. The disease is endemic in the rodent population in parts of West Africa. Lassa fever is known to be endemic in Benin, Ghana, Guinea, Liberia, Mali, Sierra Leone, Togo and Nigeria, but probably exists in other West African countries as well. Person-to-person infections and lab transmission can also occur, particularly in healthcare settings in the absence of adequate infection prevention and control measures. Diagnosis and prompt treatment are essential. The overall case fatality rate is 1% among the patients, but among the patients who are hospitalized with severe clinical presentation of Lassa fever, case fatality is as high as 15%. Early supportive care with rehydration and symptomatic treatment improves the survival chances. When it comes to the incubation period, the period for which a virus does not show any symptom is 2 to 21 days. The onset, which basically means when the disease starts to show the symptom, is usually gradual, just like COVID starts with fever, general weakness and malaise. After a few days, headache and sore throat, muscle pain, chest pain, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, cough and abdominal pain may follow, and in several cases, facial swelling, fluid in lung cavity, bleeding from the mouth, nose, vagina or gastrointestinal tract and low blood pressure may develop. Urine might also start showing high level of protein concentration. Shock, seizures, tremors, disorientation and coma may be seen in the later stages. Deafness occurs in 25% of the recovered patients. In half of these cases, hearing returns partially after 1 to 3 months. Death usually occurs within 14 days in fatal cases. Because the symptoms of Lassa fever are so varied and non-specific, clinical diagnosis is often difficult, especially in early course of disease. This virus is very difficult to distinguish from other viral hemorrhagic fevers such as Ebola, malaria, shigellosis, typhoid fever and yellow fever. Let us know in the comment section if there is a vaccine against Lassa fever or not. So this is it for today. Let us now move on to the question of the day.